Why do we admire strong people? We think they're built differently, that they have some special gift we don't. But what if I told you that's a myth? The truth is, behind every strong person isn't luck or genetics. It's a quiet, invisible engine called mental discipline. It's not something you're born with, it's something you choose. Good evening. Let me start with a question for you. Have you ever looked at someone, a leader, an athlete, a soldier, or a single parent, and wondered how they keep going? We admire strong people. We see their achievements, their resilience, and their ability to show up every day through storms, chaos, and failure. We think they must be built differently, and you're right. They are, but not in the way you might think. It's not genetics. It's not luck. It's not some mysterious gift. Behind every strong person, every admired leader, there's something quietly at work in the background: mental discipline. Mental discipline isn't flashy. It doesn't make headlines, but is the hidden engine of every person who doesn't give up when the world tells them they should. Tonight, we're going to explore what mental discipline is and how, when mastered, it becomes the foundation for strength, courage, and lasting success. Mental discipline doesn't start with motivation. It begins with a decision. I am not talking about the loud kind you post on social media with a dramatic caption and a filtered photo. I'm talking about the quiet, lonely, often invisible moment when a person simply says to themselves, "I will show up, no matter how I feel." That's where it begins. It starts before the crowd, before the applause, before the victory. It begins in the darkness, when the alarm goes off at 5 a.m. and no one else is awake, when the body aches, the heart is heavy, and the mind whispers, "Just sleep in today." But something deeper, something unshakable, replies, "No, get up, we go anyway." We often think that strong people are naturally motivated, that they have some constant fire we just don't have. But that's a myth. Strong people aren't strong because they feel like it. They're strong because they choose to be, especially when they don't. Think about the single mother who packs her children's lunches and smiles, even though she cried herself to sleep the night before, or the college student working a night shift just to afford textbooks, pushing through exhaustion to study because they believe in something more. It's the person battling addiction for years, waking up each day and deciding sometimes every 5 minutes not to take that drink, even when every part of them is screaming for relief. None of these people waited to feel ready. None of them waited to feel powerful. They decided to be strong before the feeling came. That is the essence of mental discipline, not waiting for the right emotion to sweep in and save you, but choosing to act despite the storm inside. We've been told a dangerous lie, that we need to feel motivated to take action, that we need to feel confident before we step out, that we need to be inspired before we do something hard. But the truth is the opposite. Action leads to motivation. Consistency builds confidence. Discipline breeds inspiration. The ones who move anyway, who lace up their shoes and run in the rain, who make the scary phone call, who start the project when they don't feel ready, those are the ones who rise, not because they're fearless, but because they've made a decision that their values are stronger than their moods. Think about someone you deeply admire. I guarantee their strength didn't come from perfect circumstances or relentless motivation. It came from decisions, thousands of small, painful, private decisions to stay the course, to stand up when it would have been easier to sit down, to be kind when anger would have felt justified, to keep believing when there was no evidence things would get better. That's not magic, that's discipline, and it always starts with a choice available to all of us regardless of our background or emotional state. That's what makes mental discipline so powerful. It's not reserved for the elite. It belongs to anyone willing to say, "Today, I choose not to quit." It sounds simple, but it is not easy. What is mental discipline? The brain doesn't like discomfort. It wants shortcuts and dopamine. Mental discipline is the willingness to disappoint those cravings, to delay the reward, to sit with the pain, and to stay focused when distraction is more appealing. But here's the incredible thing. Every time you make that hard choice, you grow, you strengthen your identity. You prove to yourself that you are capable of doing difficult things. And little by little, choice by choice, you transform not into someone you're pretending to be, but into the person you were always meant to become. One of the most inspiring stories I ever heard came from a woman who beat cancer twice. I asked her what got her through the treatments, the surgeries, and the fear. She said something I'll never forget. I made a decision the first day I got diagnosed. I decided this would not break me. And every day after that, I just kept deciding. That's it. Not a magical mindset, but the willingness to keep deciding, even on the worst days, that your story isn't over, that your effort still matters, that your life is still worth showing up for. So if you're waiting to feel ready, don't. If you're hoping for motivation to carry you, let that go. Instead, make the choice. Even if your hands are shaking, even if your knees are weak, even if your mind is full of doubt, choose to show up anyway. Choose to be the person who doesn't quit. Choose to believe in the power of quiet, daily courage. Because mental discipline doesn't start with a feeling, it starts with a choice. Being mentally disciplined doesn't mean you don't feel. It doesn't mean you shut down your emotions or pretend they don't exist. In fact, some of the most mentally disciplined people feel more deeply than others. The difference is they don't let those feelings drive the car. They know how to sit in the driver's seat with fear in the back, anger in the passenger side, and sadness in the rearview mirror, and still keep moving forward. Mental discipline isn't about becoming numb. It's about learning how to steer when the storm hits. Because storms do come. Fear will come. Pain will come. Anger, heartbreak, and self-doubt will all show up. The difference between those who collapse and those who lead is not who feels more, but who knows what to do when those feelings show up. In 2008, Captain Chesley Sully Sullenberger was flying U.S. Airways Flight 1549 when both engines failed. Just minutes after takeoff, he had 2 minutes and 8 seconds to assess the crisis, make decisions, and land the plane safely on the Hudson River, with 155 lives depending on him. He didn't panic. He didn't freeze. He navigated it calmly, clearly, and decisively. That's emotional mastery. That's discipline. It wasn't that he didn't feel fear. It's that he didn't allow fear to dictate his behavior. Emotion didn't disappear. It was channeled, directed, and transformed into clarity, control, and focused action. This is what mental discipline looks like in practice, not perfection, but a refusal to be ruled by the noise in your chest or the chaos in your mind. The disciplined mind learns to say, yes, I'm scared. Yes, this hurts like hell, but I choose the next right action. It doesn't wait for the fear to go away. It simply says, I'm not letting this emotion write the story. And that is a skill that can be learned, practiced, and strengthened. We've been taught that emotions are a problem, that showing them is a weakness, that feeling them is failure. But that's not true. Emotions are information. They are signals, not commands. They're like warning lights on a dashboard. They tell you something needs attention, but they do not determine where the car goes. You can feel rage and still choose to respond with grace. You can feel grief and still choose to get out of bed. You can feel doubt and still take the risk. That's what leaders do. That's what survivors do. That's what warriors do, not because they are invulnerable, but because they've trained themselves to lead their emotions rather than follow them. Think of a firefighter running into a burning building. Do you think they don't feel fear? Of course they do. Their heart pounds, their adrenaline surges, and their mind screams, this is dangerous. But their training and mental discipline kick in. They move anyway. They've learned to feel and act at the same time. This is a mindset anyone can adopt. A teenager facing a bully, a teacher holding space for hurting students, a caregiver showing up for someone whose memory is slipping away. In all these examples, there is emotional weight, but also emotional leadership. It begins by recognizing the difference between reacting and responding. Reacting is automatic. It's letting the emotion take the wheel. Responding is intentional. It's choosing your behavior even when your body is screaming for relief, revenge, or retreat. And here's the real test, not when everything is calm, but when life shakes you. When someone betrays you, when your plans collapse, or when you're heartbroken. In those moments, discipline whispers, this feeling is valid, but it doesn't get to decide what I do next. That's a kind of power no. Emotion can touch. I once heard a story about a woman who had just lost her husband unexpectedly. People asked her how she was staying so composed. She said, "Oh, I fall apart, just not all the time. I fall apart when I choose to, and then I get back to what needs to be done." That is not coldness. That is strength in its most graceful form. She understood that emotional discipline doesn't mean refusing to break. It means choosing when and how to break so that you can rebuild with dignity, not destruction. We live in a world that tells us to react, to lash out, to escape. But discipline invites us to pause, to breathe, to reflect, and to choose not based on what hurts, but based on what heals. This is what it means to lead ourselves. We don't ignore our emotions, we lead them. Discipline versus motivation. Know the difference. Motivation is a spark, but sparks don't last. They flash, they flare, and then they fade. Discipline is what keeps the fire burning long after the excitement is gone. It's easy to move when you're inspired or in the mood. But what happens when the feeling disappears? What happens when you wake up and don't want to go? When your body aches, your mind resists, and the only thing calling your name is comfort? That's when discipline enters the conversation. And for many, that's when transformation begins. On the days you feel like it, sure, run the marathon. But what defines you are the days you lace up your shoes, when everything in your head tells you not to. The mornings you push through resistance. The nights you sit down to write, study, or plan not because you feel like it, but because you've committed to something bigger than a mood. Discipline is not about forcing yourself. It's about aligning your actions with your values again and again, even when it hurts. Jocko Willink, a former Navy SEAL, wakes up every day at 4:30 a.m. to train, not because he loves early mornings, but because he's conditioned his mind to obey a mission, not a mood. He doesn't ask, "Do I feel like it?" He already knows the answer doesn't matter. The mission matters more. That's what discipline looks like in real life. It's not glamorous or loud. It often goes unnoticed. It happens in the shadows while the rest of the world is still asleep. And yet, that's where greatness is born. We live in a culture obsessed with feeling good, with chasing the next burst of motivation, the next inspirational quote. And while those things can be helpful, they aren't sustainable. Real life is messy. It's tiring. It's full of hard choices. There will be days where you don't want to do the thing you promised yourself you would. And that's when the strength of discipline reveals itself. Mental discipline means doing it anyway, when your body says no, when your mind says it doesn't matter today, when your emotions beg you to stay comfortable. Discipline is what allows you to say, "I'm doing it anyway," not because you enjoy pain, but because you've built a relationship with your future self and you've decided to honor it. There is something sacred about people who live this way. The athlete who shows up to the field before dawn, the entrepreneur who keeps building after 10 failed ideas, the single parent who juggles 3 jobs and still makes it to parent-teacher conferences. None of them are running on motivation. They're running on something deeper, something more powerful. They've chosen to make discipline a part of their identity, and that changes everything. When you identify as someone who follows through, you no longer negotiate with excuses. You operate from a deeper principle, doing the right thing, especially when it's hard. Think about any worthwhile achievement: building a business, writing a book, running a marathon, raising a child. None of it happens in a straight line. None of it happens by accident. And none of it happens because the person felt like doing it every day. It happens because they built a routine, a rhythm, a commitment, and they showed up for it again and again. And that's the beauty of discipline. You don't have to feel good to take action. You don't have to be in the perfect mood. You just have to trust that every small step, repeated consistently, is part of something much larger. Discipline compounds like interest in a savings account. Each act of discipline deposits a bit more strength, clarity, and courage into your life. Eventually, the person you were no longer exists because discipline has reshaped your identity. Once you stop relying on motivation, something strange happens. You start feeling more motivated because you're no longer controlled by your feelings. You're building trust in yourself, and self-trust is the ultimate fuel. It's not about being a machine. It's about becoming a person who can lead themselves, a person who doesn't wait for the world to give them energy, but creates their own. Discipline is not a punishment. It's a gift, a quiet declaration that says, "I respect my time. I honor my word. I value my future more than my comfort." And that's when strength is born, not in the applause, but in the thousands of silent moments where no one is watching and you do it anyway. Discipline isn't just about what we do. It's also about what we don't do. And that's where true strength lies, in the pause, in the gap between impulse and response. In those moments when everything inside you screams now, and you choose later. It's not because it's easy or comfortable, but because you know that what you want most is more important than what you want right now. In the 1960s, a team at Stanford University conducted an experiment that would become one of psychology's most famous studies. Children were placed in a room with a single marshmallow. The instructions were simple. They could eat the marshmallow immediately or wait 15 minutes and receive two. The experiment wasn't testing hunger, it was testing control. Could a child delay gratification for the promise of something better? Some waited, some didn't. But what made the study truly powerful was what happened years later. The researchers followed up with those children as they grew into adults, and the findings were striking. The children who had waited, who had exercised self-control at age 4 or 5, were significantly more successful in almost every area of life. They scored higher on tests, had lower levels of substance abuse, handled stress better, maintained healthier relationships, and earned more. The ability to delay gratification as a child predicted the ability to thrive as an adult. Why? Because impulse control is the foundation of mental discipline, and mental discipline is the foundation of long-term success. The world we live in today is addicted to immediacy. We want it now. We want to reply instantly, decide instantly, react instantly. If we feel something, we say it. If we crave something, we get it. We live in a culture of speed, and we've mistaken speed for strength. But real power is in the pause, in the space between the stimulus and the reaction. That's where leadership happens. That's where self-respect lives. That's where growth begins. Every strong person, has learned to wait. They've learned to sit with discomfort without immediately trying to escape it. They've learned to feel anger without lashing out, to feel desire without giving in, to feel pain without numbing it. They've mastered the art of delay, not because they don't feel urges, but because they've trained themselves to think beyond the moment. This is the mental discipline that separates fleeting results from lasting impact. Think about someone trying to get in shape who walks past a donut shop. Their brain lights up with craving. One bite won't hurt, they think, and maybe it won't. But this moment isn't just about the donut. It's about the pattern. Do they act on every urge? Or do they pause, remember their goal, and choose to walk away? That tiny decision, repeated over time, is what builds strength, not just in the body, but in the mind. Or consider someone in an argument. Their ego is flaring. They want to win, to be right, to say the sharp, cutting thing that would end the conversation. But instead, they pause, they breathe, they choose patience over pride. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. That's discipline. And discipline is a decision you make again and again, not just when it's convenient, but especially when it's not. We tend to think discipline is all about pushing through, grinding harder, never quitting. And yes, that's part of it. But sometimes discipline means not pushing, not saying the first thing that comes to mind, not buying the thing just because you can. Sometimes the hardest thing to do is nothing, to pause, to wait, to hold. That pause is everything. It's what separates a trigger from a reaction, a mistake from a habit, a moment of pleasure from a lifetime of regret. In that pause, we get to choose, and that choice, over time, becomes our identity. I'm someone who thinks before I act. I'm someone who doesn't need instant validation. I'm someone who waits for what matters most. That kind of identity isn't built in a single moment. It's built in hundreds of micro moments every time we pause and choose the higher road. Delaying gratification isn't about denying ourselves joy. It's about choosing a better joy, a lasting joy. An aligned joy, it's trading dopamine for meaning, urgency for clarity, and satisfaction for significance. And no, it's not easy. Our brains are wired for instant reward. Our culture fuels it. Our phones make it effortless. Everything around us screams now. But mental discipline whispers, wait. Wait because you deserve better. Wait because your future matters more than your present feeling. Wait because leadership isn't built in chaos. It's built in control. That's the kind of strength we should strive for. Not strength that comes from forcing or dominating, but strength that comes from restraint, from wisdom, from clarity. It's easy to react. It's brave to pause. And in that pause lies the power to change everything. Strong people aren't relying on bursts of willpower. They aren't counting on sudden motivation or perfect conditions. They've built systems reliable, Repeatable habits that make the hard thing easier to start and harder to avoid. They've learned that when the stakes are high, discipline can't be left to chance. It needs a structure, and that structure is called a routine. Routines are how discipline becomes identity, how intentions become actions, and how values become visible. Think about Serena Williams. Her greatness didn't arrive the moment she lifted a Grand Slam trophy. That was just the moment we all saw. The real becoming happened in the shadows, on quiet courts where no one was clapping. It happened in the thousands of silent, sweaty hours before the lights ever turned on. Early mornings, repetitive drills, days when her body ached, and her mind screamed for rest. That's when the work was done. That's when identity was shaped not in celebration, but in repetition. This is the truth about champions, leaders, and strong people across every domain. Their excellence isn't accidental, it's engineered through routine. They've decided who they want to be, and then designed daily rhythms that align with that identity. Because here's the hard truth: you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. Everyone wants to be strong, respected, resilient, and successful. But what separates those who achieve it from those who just dream about it are the small, consistent, invisible actions they take every single day. Not the grand gestures, but the disciplined, boring ones, the early wake-ups, the repeated practice, the showing up when it's inconvenient, the meal prep, the journaling, the push-ups, the difficult conversations. It's all part of the same idea. Who you are becoming is shaped by what you repeatedly do. We love to say, "I'll do it," but what really matters isn't what we say we'll do. It's what we actually do, repeatedly, especially when no one is watching. You can talk about how committed you are, but if your actions don't align with your words lose power. You become the kind of person who talks about change rather than becoming it. That's why routine matters, because it replaces the need to decide every single day. It creates a default, and when your default is aligned with who you want to be, you don't have to battle yourself every morning to make the right choice. Take a musician who practices every day, not because they're inspired every day, but because practice is part of who they are. Or a business leader who journals every night to stay self-aware. It's not flashy, but it sharpens their edge over time. These actions compound. They shape identity. The irony is that most people think routines are restrictive, that they limit freedom. But the truth is, routine is what creates freedom. When your life runs on clear, intentional patterns, you conserve energy, you eliminate unnecessary decisions, you move with momentum, and more importantly, you become someone you can trust, someone consistent, someone solid. That kind of self-trust changes everything. It changes how you walk into a room, how you face adversity, how you speak and lead. Because you're not faking it. You're not guessing. You know who you are, and your daily actions prove it. This isn't just about elite athletes or CEOs. It's about anyone who wants to live with strength. A mother building a morning routine so she can care for herself before caring for others. A student choosing to study for 30 focused minutes each night, instead of cramming before an exam. A recovering addict choosing one small habit that keeps them grounded. These routines may seem small, but they matter. They send a message: I am someone who shows up. I am someone who chooses purpose over impulse. I am someone building a life on purpose, not by accident. That's how identity is forged, not with one dramatic decision, but with many small ones. Over time, we all have routines. The question is whether they rebuilding the person we want to become or reinforcing the person we've been trying to grow out of. You already have a system, whether you've chosen it or not. The question is it working for you or against you? If you want to change your life, don't start by changing your goals. Start by changing your rhythm. Design a routine that reflects who you want to become, and then honor it, especially on the days you don't feel like it. That's when identity locks in. Not when it's easy, but when it's inconvenient, and you do it anyway. You are not just what you dream about. You are not what you say you'll do next year. You are what you consistently do. Your routine is your truth. And over time, it becomes your legacy. Discipline isn't about doing what feels good. It's about learning to do what's right, especially when it's uncomfortable. Mental strength isn't forged in ease. It's forged in the fire of resistance. And anyone who has ever grown in any meaningful way knows that pain is part of the process. But we've been taught to treat discomfort like a warning sign, something to avoid, something to escape. The truth is, discomfort is often a signal that you're on the right path, not the wrong one. Have you ever gone back to the gym after a long break? That first week is brutal. Your muscles ache, your motivation dips, even sitting down hurts. But that pain is the process working. That's your body waking up. The same is true in life. Whether it's starting a new career, facing an old trauma, or having a hard conversation, it hurts at first. But that initial sting doesn't mean stop. It means you're stretching. It means you're moving. The mentally disciplined understand this. They don't run from discomfort. They lean in. Not because they enjoy pain, but because they understand its purpose. They know that every meaningful transformation lives on the other side of resistance. Think about the people who've inspired you most. Were they made in comfort? No, they were shaped in the struggle. They walked through hardship, doubt, and failure and kept going, not because it was easy, but because they decided that discomfort wouldn't be the thing that broke them. It would be the thing that built them. The problem is we've grown up in a world that's allergic to discomfort. We're told to self-soothe, to avoid pain, to numb it with scrolling, shopping, or surface-level positivity. But avoidance is not strength. Avoidance is permission to stay stuck. What the mentally disciplined learn is this: discomfort doesn't define you. How you respond to it does. There's a story of a young woman training to run her first marathon. Every mile hurt. Her knees ached. Her lungs burned. She wanted to quit halfway through training. But instead of giving up, she reminded herself, pain is temporary, finishing is permanent. She told herself every day, pain is a teacher, not a punishment. On race day, she crossed the finish line sore and exhausted, but transformed. And not because the pain disappeared, but because she didn't. That's the shift. You don't have to enjoy discomfort to get stronger. You just have to stop fearing it. Discomfort isn't failure, it's feedback. It's your mind and body adapting to something new. And every time you push through a little further, you build trust with yourself. You build evidence that says, I can do hard things. And that evidence, not inspiration or applause, is what builds confidence. Too often, we wait for the pain to go away before we move. We wait for the fear to disappear before we take the leap. But real growth doesn't wait for perfect conditions. It steps forward in spite of them. A caterpillar doesn't become a butterfly in comfort. It has to endure the cocoon, the pressure, the darkness, and the uncertainty. And if you cut the cocoon early to save the caterpillar from the struggle, it never gains the strength to fly. The same goes for us. We cannot grow unless we're willing to stay in the discomfort long enough to be changed by it. The more mentally disciplined you are, the less permission you give to temporary pain to define your permanent potential. You stop making decisions based on what feels good right now and start making them based on who you want to become. You stop asking, how do I avoid the hard thing? And start asking, what does this hard thing make possible? That shift requires everything. Instead of resenting the challenge, you learn to respect it. Instead of numbing the pain, you learn to listen to it. Instead of fearing discomfort, you learn to move through it with intention. And on the other side of that discomfort, you don't just find strength, you find clarity, you find resilience, you find the version of you that was buried under layers of avoidance and fear. That's what discipline really is. It's not about suffering for the sake of it. It's about understanding that the path to anything worth having is paved with temporary pain. And the moment you stop letting that pain make the rules is the moment you begin to lead your life instead of surviving it. Discomfort is not your enemy. It's your invitation to rise, to grow, to become. Sometimes the most powerful act of mental discipline isn't pushing harder or doing more. It's saying no. That small two-letter word carries immense weight because it draws a line in the sand. Saying no means you're protecting your time, your energy, your focus, and ultimately, your identity. It's a choice to prioritize what truly matters over what merely feels urgent or tempting. We live in a world overflowing with distractions designed to hijack our attention. Social media notifications, endless emails, the pressure to say yes to every request. These are all subtle thieves of our mental clarity. But those who master mental discipline learn early on that every yes is a trade-off. Saying yes to one thing means saying no to something else. The question isn't how to do everything, it's how to do the right things. Think about the power in the word no. It's not just a refusal, it's a declaration. No to distractions that pull you away from your goals. No to toxic people who drain your spirit. No to short-term pleasures that steal your long-term potential. This isn't about being rigid, it's about protecting your mission. Warren Buffett once shared a profound insight. The difference between successful people and very successful people is that very successful people say no to almost everything. That statement reveals the essence of disciplined focus. It's not about doing more. It's about doing less, but better. To say no effectively, you must first have clarity. Clarity about what you value. Clarity about your mission. Clarity about the kind of person you want to be. Without this, no becomes just a word without direction and excuse to avoid, rather than a commitment to focus. Mental discipline demands that you know what matters so deeply that saying no becomes a natural act of self-respect. Imagine someone who is clear about their purpose, a parent devoted to being present for their children, an entrepreneur focused on building a meaningful business, or a student determined to master their craft. For them, every yes must align with that purpose. If it doesn't, it's a no. They guard their time fiercely because they understand that time is their most valuable currency. But saying no is hard. It requires courage because it often means disappointing others, risking criticism, and feeling the sting of exclusion. It demands standing firm when the easy path is to comply. Yet, it is this very courage that mental discipline cultivates, the courage to choose what serves you best, even when it's uncomfortable. Boundaries are the physical manifestation of saying no. They create the space you need to grow and thrive. Without boundaries, you risk being pulled in every direction, leaving you exhausted and ineffective. Boundaries help you preserve your mental energy for what truly matters. Consider the story of a successful leader who learned this the hard way. Early in their career, they said yes to every opportunity and meeting, believing being helpful was the key to success. But they soon found themselves overwhelmed, burned out, and losing sight of their original goals. It was only when they began to say no with intention that they regained control. They started protecting their time for strategic thinking and deep work. Their productivity soared, and so did their impact. Mental discipline is not about isolation or rigidity. It's about alignment. It's about creating a life where your actions reflect your values and your yeses are powerful because they are chosen with purpose. Saying no frees you to say yes to what truly fuels your growth, joy, and success. It's important to remember that saying no isn't a what-I'm event. It's a practice. Each day presents new challenges, requests, and temptations. Mental discipline trains you to return to your core values every time and ask yourself, does this align? Does this serve my purpose? If the answer is no, then you say no again and again until your boundaries become unshakable. When you master the discipline of boundaries, you reclaim your life from the noise. You move through the world with intention rather than reaction. You protect your time and your mind from the small distractions that add up to chaos. And in doing so, you create the space to build something meaningful. In the end, saying no is an act of love for yourself and your mission. It's a commitment to prioritize what's most important, even when it's hard. Because true mental discipline isn't about doing everything. It is about doing what matters most and having the wisdom and courage to say no to the rest. If you truly want to be stronger, if you want to build resilience that lasts, power that sustains, and courage that doesn't waver, you have to understand one fundamental truth. Strength doesn't come from pushing harder alone. Strength doesn't come from brute force or willpower alone. Strength begins, always, with the mind. The greatest warriors, the most successful leaders, the most devoted parents, the ones who have changed the world, they started by training their minds. Before anything else, think about the people you admire. What separates them from the rest isn't some miraculous talent or luck. It's not an absence of failure or pain. It's the relentless choice to cultivate mental discipline. They made a choice to prioritize their inner game over external circumstances. And that choice was not easy. They practiced day after day. They committed to showing up even when they didn't feel like it. Because mental discipline isn't about feeling motivated every moment. It's about doing the right thing, even when your feelings say otherwise. They embraced failure, not conclusion. Train your mind, transform your life as a dead end. But as a teacher, they stumbled. They fell and they made mistakes, but they rose every single time. This process of falling and rising, of persistence and resilience, is the foundation of true strength. There were moments when saying no was the hardest thing to do. Saying no to distractions that pull you away from your goals. Saying no to the comfort that lures you into stagnation. Saying no to the voices, both inside and out, that tell you it's easier to quit. Yet, those moments became the defining points of their journey. Saying no was an act of courage, an act of clarity, and a refusal to settle for anything less than what aligned with their deepest purpose. They focused with unwavering clarity. In a world filled with noise and endless options, focus becomes a rare superpower. It means deliberately choosing what matters most and letting go of what doesn't. It means protecting your time, your energy, and your heart from distractions and chaos. Focus is what transforms scattered effort into powerful momentum. They endured challenges that would have broken others because they saw beyond the immediate, struggle to the person they were becoming in the process. Mental discipline isn't some abstract concept. It is the very thing that transforms ordinary people into extraordinary ones. It's the invisible force behind every great achievement. It's what makes you show up when no one is watching, keep going when the world says stop, and rise after every fall. It's the commitment to live intentionally, to act with purpose, and to shape your life one disciplined moment at a time. And here's the best part: this strength, this resilience, this mental fortitude isn't something you're born with. It's not a fixed trait or a gift reserved for a lucky few. It's something you build. You build it with every choice to stand firm in the face of fear. You build it with every decision to act according to your values, even when it's hard. You build it with every disciplined habit, every boundary you set, and every moment you delay gratification for a greater reward. This isn't about overnight transformation or sudden miracles. It's about the slow, steady grind of training your mind daily. It's about stacking small wins, building habits, and strengthening the inner voice that says, I can. It's about learning to navigate your emotions to lead your feelings rather than be led by them. It's about choosing mental mastery over momentary impulse. The journey isn't glamorous. It's filled with setbacks and moments of doubt. But that's exactly why it matters. Because when you cultivate mental discipline, you become unshakable. You become the kind of person who, no matter what life throws your way, responds with strength, clarity, and grace. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be committed. Commit to showing up for yourself every day. Commit to training your mind with the same rigor you would train your body. Commit to saying no when it counts and yes to what truly moves you forward. Commit to embracing discomfort because growth lives there. Commit to leading your emotions and mastering your impulses. Strength is built, not found. It is forged through intentional action, resilience, and unwavering discipline. It is a choice you make every moment, every day. And when you choose mental discipline, you unlock a power within yourself that no external force can take away. That power is inside you, waiting for you to claim it. Start now. Train your mind. Choose discipline, and watch as you transform not just your life, but the world around you, one disciplined moment at a time. If you liked this video, found it helpful, and feel motivated, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, leave a comment and share it with your friends and family.